The year is 1946. The city of Frankfurt is a corpse, a mangled skeleton of steel and concrete picked clean by the vultures of war. In the suffocating darkness of an alleyway behind an American supply depot, a boy freezes. He is 12 years old, but his eyes are ancient. His name is Klaus Fischer, and he is a ghost hollowed out by hunger. Clutched to his chest is a stolen loaf of white bread, still radiating a warmth that feels like life itself. It might as well be a bar of solid gold. Then, the world explodes into white. A flashlight beam pins him to the wall, a cruel, unblinking eye. He is caught. The light is so blinding he can't see the man's face, only the terrifying silhouette of a conqueror, an American uniform, broad shoulders, and the cold, hard line of a rifle slung across the back. This is it. This is the end. This is how I die. His older brother's warning screams in his mind, a prophecy of doom. They will shoot you for taking so much as an apple, Klaus. These are the same monsters who turned our cities to ash. They have no mercy. The word monster had been hammered into his skull by the propaganda, by the posters on every corner showing hook-nosed demons in American uniforms dragging away blonde German children. He'd believed it. How could he not? His father was buried somewhere beneath this city, crushed in the firebombing of '44. His uncle, a 62-year-old man armed with a hunting rifle against a column of tanks, had simply vanished into the meat grinder of the final days. The Americans were not men. They were a reckoning. But the monster in front of him wasn't moving. It was just standing there. And Klaus couldn't run. Fear had poured concrete into his legs. He could only think of his mother, who hadn't eaten in 3 days, her body withering after trading her wedding ring for a pittance of black market flour. He thought of his little sister, Greta, whose nightly cries from an empty, swelling stomach were the soundtrack of their ruin. What choice did he have? What choice does a rat have in a maze of traps? The silhouette steps forward. The soldier says something. The words are alien, a harsh, guttural bark in a language Klaus can't comprehend. The soldier is young, maybe 25, with dark hair and eyes that carry the exhaustion of 1,000 years. He's closer now, his hand reaching out. Klaus braces himself, flinching, expecting the brutal slap of a rifle butt, the crack of bone. Instead, the soldier's fingers touch the bread. The touch is gentle, almost reverent. He doesn't rip it away. He doesn't strike. He just looks at the loaf, then at the skeletal boy clutching it, then back at the bread. Then the monster speaks, and the words that come out shatter Klaus's reality. In broken, heavily accented German, the soldier asks, "Du hungrig? Are you hungry?" Klaus can only nod, a spastic jerk of his head. His entire body is convulsing, a symphony of fear, cold, and the relentless gnawing of starvation that had already stripped 3 pounds from his emaciated frame this month alone. What the American does next is an act Klaus will replay in his mind 1,000,000 times, a scene he will carry to his grave. He takes the loaf. But he doesn't keep it. He breaks it in half. He hands a massive piece back to Klaus. Then he points a thumb toward the depot's kitchen door. "Morgen früh," he says, "tomorrow morning. Du kommst arbeiten. You come work." Klaus stares at the bread in his hand, this impossible gift. His mind screams, "It's a trap! They are cruel! They want to humiliate me, to make a spectacle of the German thief before they punish me." But the soldier is already walking away. He reaches the depot entrance, pauses, and turns. He says one more word, a word that will become the cornerstone of Klaus's new life. Versprechen. Promise. Klaus didn't know it then, couldn't possibly comprehend it, but that single piece of bread would feed him for the rest of his life. He doesn't go the next morning. Of course he doesn't. He huddles in the corner of their shared room, a squalid space crammed with 3 families in the bombed-out shell of a building. The bread is divided with the precision of a diamond cutter. A piece for Mama, a piece for Greta, a piece for him. He chews each mouthful into a paste, making it last, trying to resurrect the memory of real flour on his tongue for the first time in an eternity. The hungry eyes of the other families watch him, but no one dares ask where the miracle came from. It was a trick, he tells himself, the old hate a comforting blanket. He was mocking me. If I go back, they'll be waiting with handcuffs and rifles. But by evening the bread is gone. The miracle has been devoured, and Greta is crying again. It's a weak, pathetic sound now, the sound of a small body surrendering to its own emptiness. Klaus can't get the soldier's face out of his head. It wasn't angry, or disgusted, or cruel. It was just tired, and maybe sad. Tomorrow, you come work. The words were an invitation, not a threat, a promise. He had been trained for monsters. In the Deutsches Jungvolk, the junior Hitler youth, his instructor, Herr Vogel, had shown them the posters. The American GIs with the slogan, "They will defile our women, execute our children." This is the price of their Jewish master's revenge. Klaus had swallowed every poisonous word. He had helped identify his own father's pulverized body by the wedding ring still on a dismembered finger. He had hidden in a root cellar with his mother and sister when the Americans rolled into the countryside, waiting for the screams Herr Vogel promised would come. But the screams never came. Instead, American medics set up a field hospital and treated German civilians alongside their own wounded. It was a contradiction his indoctrinated mind couldn't solve. The scent from the American depot had been a constant torture. The smell of baking bread, of yeast and butter and roasting meat, ghosts from a life before the war. It drove him insane with need. He'd tried stealing twice before. A British soldier had boxed his ears and sent him running. The second time, he'd dropped a precious tin of beans, watching it split open on the cobblestones as he wept in furious frustration. Last night, he thought he'd finally succeeded, until he ran straight into Private James Crawford of Louisville, Kentucky. The next morning, Klaus goes. He walks to the front gate this time, in the cold light of day, his heart a frantic bird beating itself to death against the cage of his ribs. A giant of a guard with red hair and a face full of freckles looks down at the tiny German boy and barks something in English. Klaus stammers, his voice a squeak. "Soldat, gestern." The soldier, "Yesterday." "Sagte Arbeit," he said, "work." The guard lets out a booming laugh, a sound that makes Klaus flinch, but then he just waves him through, pointing towards the kitchen building. They're all in on it, Klaus thinks, his blood running cold. They've been waiting for me. He pushes the kitchen door open, expecting a tribunal. Instead, there is only one person inside. The same soldier from the alley. He's standing at a steel counter, cutting vegetables with a knife big enough to split Klaus in two. Private Crawford looks up, and his face breaks into a smile. Not a smirk, not a cruel grin. A real smile, one that reaches his tired eyes. "You came," he says in that mangled German. "Gut, guter Junge." "Good. Good boy." Klaus stands frozen in the doorway, coiled like a spring, ready to bolt. Crawford sees the terror in his eyes. He deliberately, carefully, sets down the massive knife on the counter, where Klaus can see it is no longer in his hand. He walks to a shelf, takes down an adult-sized apron that will swallow Klaus whole, and holds it out. "Du arbeitest," Crawford says, gesturing to a mountain of potatoes on the counter. "Du isst. You work. You eat. Fair, ja?" Klaus is paralyzed, his brain a battlefield of contradictions. He's setting a trap, but he's smiling. They torture children, but he put down the knife. Americans are monsters, but he fed me. Crawford sighs, seeming to understand. He picks up a potato and a peeler and begins a slow, exaggerated demonstration. Peel, rinse, cut. He slides the peeler across the counter toward Klaus. You try, show me. Klaus's hands tremble as he picks up the tool. He's peeled thousands of potatoes. For 2 years, it's been his entire world. But under Crawford's patient gaze, he fumbles. The peeler slips, and a thin line of red blood wells up on his thumb. He jerks back, bracing for the punishment he knows is coming for being clumsy, for being weak. But Crawford just makes a soft sound. Ah, hell. He moves quickly, but not to strike. He grabs a clean cloth, wets it under the tap, and reaches for Klaus's hand. Klaus flinches away on pure instinct. Crawford stops dead. He holds the cloth out, an offering. He doesn't advance. It's okay, he says softly, his voice gentle. Let me see, ich helfe, I help. Not I order. Not you must. I help. Slowly, so slowly it's agonizing, Klaus extends his wounded hand. Crawford's touch is unbelievably gentle as he wraps the cloth around the cut. His hands are warm and calloused from work, not the soft, pampered hands of the decadent Americans from the propaganda posters. There, Crawford says. Okay, now try again. Slow. Ich zeige dir. I show you. He stands beside Klaus, his presence a shield, not a threat, guiding the boy's hands without forcing them. Peel, rinse, cut. When Klaus successfully finishes his first potato, Crawford gives his shoulder a brief, firm pat. Gut. Sehr gut. Good. Very good. Klaus blinks back, hot, confusing tears. They work for an hour, in a silence that isn't empty, but comfortable. Crawford doesn't interrogate him. He just works alongside him. At midday, he pulls out 2 plates and fills both with a thick, fragrant stew, bubbling with chunks of meat and vegetables. It is more food than Klaus has seen in one place since before his father died. He sets 1 plate in front of Klaus, and they eat together. The meat is an explosion of flavor in Klaus's mouth, rich, tender, swimming in a gravy that feels like a sin. Crawford tears off a chunk of fresh bread for him. Klaus tries to eat slowly, to maintain a shred of dignity, but his starving body betrays him. He shovels the food in like a wild animal, sauce dripping down his chin, his eyes wide with a pleasure so intense it's painful. Crawford doesn't laugh. He doesn't comment. He just quietly slides his own piece of bread across the table so Klaus can mop up the last of the gravy. When Klaus finally looks up, tears are streaming down his face, from gratitude, from shame, from a confusion so profound it shakes his soul. Crawford is watching him, and his expression is something Klaus has never seen directed at him from an adult who wasn't his mother. It's compassion. You have family? Crawford asks carefully. Mother? Father? Sister? Mother, Klaus whispers. Sister, small, 6 years. Crawford nods slowly. He stands, walks to a supply closet and pulls out a canvas bag. Methodically, he begins to fill it. A whole loaf of bread, a tin of meat, a jar of fruit preserves, a small sack of precious white flour. These are not scraps. This is a king's ransom, worth more on the black market than 10 of his mother's wedding rings. He holds the bag out to Klaus. Klaus just stares at it. At him. At the bag. He finally finds his voice. Why? He asks in German. Warum? Why are you doing this? Crawford's face flickers with something painful. He reaches into his pocket and pulls out a photograph, creased and worn from 1,000 viewings. He shows it to Klaus. A woman with dark hair and a little boy, maybe 8 years old, both smiling into the camera. My wife, Crawford says quietly. My son, Tommy. He traces the boy's smiling face with a calloused finger. "I think, if my Tommy is hungry, if he needs to steal food to eat, I hope someone helps him. I hope someone is kind." Klaus takes the bag, his hands trembling. "Danke," he whispers. "Thank you." Crawford musters a small, tired smile. "Tomorrow. You come tomorrow?" Klaus runs home, the bag clutched to his chest like a holy relic. The weight of it is more valuable than any gold. But it's not the food that finally makes him break down sobbing as he sprints through the ruined streets of Frankfurt. It's the photograph of a little American boy named Tommy, and the way Private Crawford's voice had cracked when he said, "I hope someone is kind." He comes back the next day, and the next, and the one after that. At first, he's still a phantom in the kitchen, a ghost waiting for the trap to spring. He works with a desperate efficiency, speaking only when spoken to, taking his daily payment of food and disappearing. Stay useful. Don't give him a reason to change his mind. But Crawford is a rock. Every day, the same routine. Work, eat together, take food home. And every day, Crawford talks to him. Simple stories about a place called Kentucky, about something called bluegrass, and horses that ran in circles for sport. He laughs at his own atrocious German, and the sound begins to chip away at the ice around Klaus's heart. Klaus starts arriving earlier. He starts asking questions. "What is this?" he asks, pointing to a strange vegetable. "How you make this?" he asks, watching Crawford work his magic at the stove. Crawford answers every single question with infinite patience, often resorting to wild pantomime that makes Klaus crack his first real, genuine smile in over a year. Then one day, the sanctuary is breached. A sergeant storms into the kitchen, a tall man with a face like granite, and starts barking at Crawford in rapid-fire English, stabbing a finger in Klaus's direction. Klaus freezes. This is it. Someone complained. The game is up. The sergeant's voice is rising, accusatory. Crawford's voice rises to meet it. A low, firm wall of defiance. They are arguing over him. The sergeant points at the door, an order of dismissal. Crawford physically steps between Klaus and the superior officer, his body a shield. Finally, the sergeant throws his hands up in disgust and storms out. Crawford turns to Klaus, his face flushed with anger. "You okay?" He struggles to find the German words. He says, "Rules." I say. He makes a dismissive, almost vulgar gesture. "You stay. You work here, okay?" Klaus's voice is a barely audible whisper. "You fought. For me." Crawford looks almost surprised by the statement. "Of course," he says, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "You're a good worker. You're a good kid." Something inside Klaus Fischer's chest cracks open. He is 12 years old. He has survived a war that killed his father, watched his city burn to the ground, and stolen food to keep his sister from starving. And in this moment, a soldier from the army that destroyed his world is calling him a good kid. He is defending him. He is protecting him. In that instant, the entire foundation of his life, built on the bedrock of state-sponsored hatred, crumbles into dust. Everything they told me was a lie. The realization hits him with the force of a physical blow, as shocking and world-altering as the moment the firebomb had ripped his building apart. Crawford mistakes his stunned silence for fear. "Hey, it's okay," he says, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. "You're safe here, I promise." He was safe. Klaus would later say that was the moment he stopped being afraid. It was the moment he stopped being a German and Crawford stopped being an American. In that kitchen, they were just two people, and one of them was being kind. One morning, a group of German men, former soldiers, gather outside the depot fence. They see Klaus working and start yelling, "Verräter Junge, traitor boy, Amerikaner Haustier." American pet. The words are like acid, shame burning in Klaus's stomach, but Crawford's hand lands firmly on his shoulder. "They are wrong," he says, his voice low and intense. "You are not a traitor. You survive. You help your family. That is not shame. That is brave." He crouches to look Klaus in the eye. "Listen, war over. Germany lost. I am not happy about war. You are not happy, but war is over. Now, we build again. Zusammen? Together. Yes?" "They say Americans are—" Klaus stops, the poison from his training trying to surface. "Americans are gangsters. Americans are Jewish puppets." "Say what?" Crawford prompts gently. Klaus shakes his head. "Nothing. They are wrong. You are not what they say." A sad smile touches Crawford's lips. "We are not all good. Some American soldiers, they are bad. Some are good. Like all people. Like Germans. Some bad, some good. Yes?" It was the simplest, most profound truth Klaus had ever heard, and it unraveled the last thread of his hatred. It's not about monsters and heroes. It's just about people. Crawford starts teaching Klaus English during their lunch breaks. He brings him forms for a new school being set up by the occupation authorities. "You work morning, go school afternoon," he insists. "You are smart, cannot work kitchen forever, must have future." The idea that someone, an enemy, was not just feeding him for today, but was invested in his future, was more than Klaus could process. That night, Klaus tells his mother everything. He expects anger, a lecture on the danger, on the shame of working for the occupiers. Instead, his mother, Anna Fischer, simply weeps. She pulls her son into her thin arms and whispers, "Danke Gott." Thank God. The next morning she puts on her best dress, a patched but clean garment from a forgotten time, and walks with Klaus to the depot. She stands before the American soldier who has been feeding her children, her back straight with a desperate, fragile dignity. Crawford shakes her hand, a formal gesture of respect. "Your son," he says slowly, "very good worker, very smart. You have a good boy." Anna's voice trembles. "I cannot pay you. I have nothing." "No pay needed," Crawford interrupts gently. "He works. I feed. That is pay." And he hands her a bag of rations even larger than usual. Anna takes it, her hands shaking, and then she does something that stuns them both. She bows her head and kisses the soldier's hand, a gesture of profound, almost biblical gratitude. "Bitte danke," she whispers. "Please, thank you." Crawford's eyes are wet. He gently takes his hand back and instead offers her a formal handshake. Firm, respectful, between equals. Walking home, Anna holds her son's hand. "This man," she says, her voice thick with emotion, "this American, he is a good man." "Yes," Klaus agrees. She stops, turning to face him, her eyes burning with intensity. "You must remember this, Klaus. When they tell you someone is your enemy, when they tell you to hate people you have never met, when they tell you the world is simple and clear, they are lying. Do you understand?" "I understand, Mama." "Good," she says, squeezing his hand. "Now you take this gift he has given you, this job, this food, this chance at a future, and you build a good life, a life that would make your father proud." Crawford rotated home in August 1946. The news came suddenly. "I go back to America tomorrow," he said, his face a mask of neutrality. "Back to my wife, my son." He looked at Klaus, who now ran the prep kitchen with confidence, his school books piled in a corner. "You continue. You are strong now. You have a future." Klaus felt his world tilting on its axis, but he was 12 years old and trying desperately to be a man. "I will not forget you," he said, his English still halting. "You saved my life." Crawford shook his head firmly. "No, you saved your life. You were brave enough to come back that second day. You were brave enough to trust. I just tried to be kind." He handed Klaus an envelope. Inside was a letter of recommendation, praising Klaus's work ethic and intelligence. At the bottom was an address in Louisville, Kentucky. "You write me," Crawford said. "Tell me about your life, okay?" They shook hands, one last time, as equals. That single act of kindness in a dark alley did not end that day. It was only the beginning. Klaus Fischer went to school. He became an electrical engineer, a man who would literally help bring the lights back on in the city the American bombers had darkened. He wrote his first letter to Crawford in 1952. For the next 47 years, letters crossed the Atlantic, weaving a story of two families forever bound by a loaf of bread. Photos were exchanged. Tommy, the smiling boy in the wallet, grew into a man. Klaus's own daughters grew up knowing the story of the kind American soldier who saved their father. In 1989, Klaus finally visited Kentucky. Crawford, now gray-haired and retired, cooked him the exact same stew from that first day in the kitchen. "Still the best food I have ever tasted," Klaus told him, and the two old men, a former German youth and a former American GI, laughed together. When Crawford died in 1993, Klaus flew back for the funeral. He stood before a crowd of strangers and told them the story. He did not see an enemy child, Klaus said, his voice thick but his English now perfect. He saw a hungry boy, and he fed him. In doing so, he gave me back my humanity. After the service, Crawford's son, Tommy, a man Klaus's own age, embraced him. "Dad told me about you my whole life," he said. "He always said you taught him something, too. That kindness isn't some grand gesture. Sometimes it's just seeing someone who's hungry and sharing your bread." Klaus Fischer died in 2016. In his desk, his daughters found a box. Inside was every letter Crawford had ever sent. And tucked within them was the worn, soft piece of paper with the letter of recommendation from 1946. At the bottom, in faded pencil, Klaus had written a single sentence in German. "The day I learned that kindness is stronger than hate." That story, that single act, now sits in a German museum for schoolchildren to see. It's a testament, a promise, that we are not defined by the flags we wave or the uniforms we wear. We are not defined by who we are told to hate. We are defined by who we choose to help. This story of a connection that crossed enemy lines, that defied all logic, is a testament to the human spirit. And I have to wonder, where is this story reaching you right now? Are you in Kentucky or in Frankfurt? Are you in Asia, Africa, or South America? Drop a comment below and let us know where in the world you're watching from, because a story like this has no borders. And if it moved you, do us a favor. Smash that like button and subscribe to the channel so we can keep sharing these histories that truly matter. In the end, it comes down to a choice. The world will always give you reasons to hate. It will always draw lines in the sand and tell you who is on the other side. But James Crawford taught Klaus Fischer, and their story teaches us, that true strength isn't in fighting your enemy. It's in having the courage to feed him. It's in the choice to see a hungry child, not a uniform. To build a bridge, not a wall. That choice, that one simple act of sharing your bread, is how you change the world. Not with grand declarations, but with one person, one moment, one incredible act of kindness at a time.